Hello, Warrior. I'm excited to be talking to you again today. The topic that I want to talk about is kind of related to life keeping us down and holding us down and pushing us down and beating us down. It's something we all struggle with and we all have to deal with. A couple of weeks ago, I was participating in a group training with other coaches and mentors, and the facilitator said something that was pretty profound. His name was Wayne Turetsky. He said, "You can't destroy something into existence, but sometimes you have to take things apart to rebuild them." I thought that was very profound. We can't destroy something into existence, but sometimes it does take rebuilding. So we're going to talk about that today. Once again, Warrior, thank you for joining me in another email and another message this week. My name is Lawrence Stone. I'm the basic trainer, and I do want to establish a rhythm to your vision. Today's message with this quote, it's one I've been reflecting on a lot, and it's a really important message, and I've been working on exactly how to share it with you, and I'm still figuring it out. So I really hope that you can understand the spirit of the message and what I'm trying to convey to you this time. But in our lives, we run into walls. We find things that are breaking us down, that are tearing us down, they feel like it's hurting us. But sometimes when we clear away the debris and we start to rebuild, we realized maybe we were going in the wrong direction anyways. Maybe we were building in the wrong direction. And sometimes starting over and rebuilding is the right direction to go. I remember when I told my wife I wanted to start this business, she's like, "Oh, we have to start all over again." We've started all over in so many different things and building the right life. And sometimes you just have to do that. You have to break it down and restart to make sure you're going in the direction best suited for you and for your life and for the people you're supposed to influence. And there's a story that I've read many times that I'm going to share with you from a man by the name of Hugh B. Brown. And it's the story of the currant bush. And whenever I feel like I'm just being beaten up and I'm frustrated because I have to start all over or I have to break things down, this story helps me remember why. And know that you're not alone if you have to go through that. I've gone through that. Mr. Brown has gone through that. Billions of other people go through that. I don't think there's a person in this world who hasn't gone through that. And it's the successful people that recognize, okay, I'm just going from where I'm at. I'm controlling what I can, and I'm rebuilding, and I'm making sure I'm rebuilding in the right direction. So, to quote, so the story from Mr. Brown starts, quote, "I was living up in Canada. I had purchased a farm. It was run down. I went out one morning and saw a currant bush. It had grown up over 6 feet high. It was going all to wood. There were no blossoms and no currants. I was raised on a fruit farm in Salt Lake before we went to Canada, and I knew what ought to happen to that currant bush. So I got some pruning shears and I clipped it back until there was nothing left but stumps. It was just coming daylight, and I thought I saw on top of each of these little stumps what appeared to be a tear. I thought that the currant bush was crying, and I was kind of simple minded, and I looked at it and smiled and said, 'What are you crying about?' You know, I thought I heard that currant bush say this: 'How could you do this to me? I was making such wonderful growth. I was almost as big as the shade tree and the fruit tree that's, that are inside the fence. And now you have cut me down. Every plant in the garden will look down on me because I didn't make what I should have made. How could you do this to me? I thought you were the gardener here.' That's what I thought I heard the currant bush say. I thought it so much that I answered. I said, 'Look, little currant bush, I am the gardener here, and I know what I want you to be. I didn't intend you to be a fruit tree or a shade tree. I want you to be a currant bush. And someday, little currant bush, when you are laden with fruit, you're going to say, thank you, Mr. Gardener, for loving me enough to cut me down. Thank you, Mr. Gardener.' Years passed, and I found myself in England. I was in command of a cavalry unit in the Canadian Army. I held the rank of field officer in the British Canadian Army. I was proud of my post, and there was an opportunity for me to become a general. I had taken all the examinations. I had the seniority. The man between me and the office of general in the British Army became a casualty, and I received a telegram from London. It said, "Be in my office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock." Signed by General Turner. I went up to London. I walked smartly into the office of the general. I saluted him smartly, and he gave me the same kind of salute that a senior officer usually gives, a sort of "get out of my way, worm." He said, "Sit down, Brown." Then he said, "I'm sorry. I cannot make this appointment. You are entitled to it. You have passed all the examinations. You have the seniority. You have been a good officer, but I can't make the appointment. You are to return to Canada and become a training officer and a transport officer." That, for which I had been hoping and praying for 10 years, suddenly slipped out of my fingers. I got on the train and started back to my town, 120 miles away, with a broken heart, with bitterness in my soul. And every click of the wheels on the rails seemed to say, "You're a failure." When I got to my tent, I was so bitter that I threw my cap on the cot. I clenched my fists and I shook them at heaven. I said, "How could you do this to me, God? I have done everything I could do to measure up. There's nothing that I could have done, that I should have done, that I haven't done. How could you do this to me?" I was as bitter as gall. And then I heard a voice, and I recognized the tone of this voice. It was my own voice. And the voice said, "I am the gardener here. I know what I want you to do." The bitterness went out of my soul, and I fell on my knees to the cot to ask forgiveness for my ungratefulness and for my bitterness. That's a very profound story. Everything he'd been working for, he was almost there. He had almost obtained his vision of what he wanted. But that wasn't the vision that the world needed him to be in. That wasn't the vision that God wanted for him. And it was denied to him. And if you go back and you read the story, it talks a little bit about why he felt he was denied it. But the fact of the matter was, is he was denied it, and he was frustrated and he was angry. But then he realized sometimes we're cut down by life so that we can rebuild into something better, something more prosperous, something more fruitful. And yeah, maybe it's not exactly what we wanted at first, but it's a way that we can live our lives to its fullest. Hugh B. Brown would go on to become a successful attorney, and he would get involved in politics, and he would stay involved in his religion, and eventually he got called to be a high-ranking member of his religion, and it allowed him to travel all over the world and speak to people and teach people and help people. And yeah, he might have had a good influence in the Canadian Army had he gotten that commission. And it's important to have that job. Whoever has that job is an important person. But that job was meant for someone else. Mr. Brown was meant to do something else. And he was able to go out all over the world and inspire people and teach people and help people and care for people because he wasn't given that commission. Yeah, it tore him down. Yeah, it beat him up. And yeah, it was difficult. But he took the pieces and he rebuilt and he went in the direction he was supposed to. And he ended up doing great things in his life because of it. So when life is tearing you down, take the pieces and rebuild. Don't just give up. There's a lot of amazing things that you can do with your life. As I was doing some research, I came across a couple things, some ideas. And I was actually, I wanted to share a couple of these ideas that popped up. But I read somewhere that change and growth require us to let go of the old, to deconstruct and dismantle the foundations that no longer serve us. It can be challenging and even painful to break down something that once held significance in our lives. However, it is through this act of disassembly that we can create space for new possibilities and the opportunity to build something stronger, more authentic, and align with our true selves. Remember, the act of deconstruction is not a sign of failure, but rather a sign of growth and transformation. It takes strength and resilience to recognize when something needs to be dismantled and the determination to rebuild it from the ground up. To kind of add on to that, the thing about that is if it needs to be dismantled, it means it was probably growing in the wrong direction. Cut it down, dismantle it, and rebuild it into the right direction, into what it's supposed to be. So here's your assignment. If you feel like something in your life is just so overwhelming, so demanding, something that you're just not progressing to where it needs to be, I want you to break it down. Break it down into smaller pieces, bite-sized pieces. Write it out and use a journal to help you out. It'll help you figure this out as you're writing things out and you're examining things. It'll help you put the pieces together. Take them into smaller pieces. It's like when you're restoring a car. Okay, when we restored that GTO, we broke it down into multiple pieces and we rebuilt different pieces. We rebuilt the engine. We rebuilt. We put in a new clutch. We rebuilt the rear axle. We did body work. Just break it down into smaller pieces, and then eventually it can all come together, and it'll grow into the right direction. It's not going to grow into what you dismantled. It's going to grow into something better and stronger. And yeah, it's going to be a little more chaotic because all of a sudden you're taking what you kind of had, even though it wasn't quite working as you wanted it to, and you're disassembling it and scattering it everywhere, and all of a sudden it feels like a bigger mess and a little more chaotic. But you just have to keep going and keep rebuilding, because then once you're done rebuilding it, it's going to be something better, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be something that you're going to be able to carry to the world and make the world a better place with it. And it's going to help you. You might have to realign your vision a little bit, but as you rebuild it, it is going to help establish a great rhythm to your vision, and it's going to help make the world better, and it's going to be amazing. Just watch what happens.